Hello and welcome to another episode of Wise Attraction. Last week, Temidaya shared with us how she unexpectedly found herself pregnant as a youth leader and the decisions she made after that. Today, she shares with us how she was able to get her life back on track from this season of brokenness. Stay tuned. Hi, Temidaya. Welcome to the show. It's good to have you back again. Thanks for coming back. Last week your story was really inspiring, and I don't know if I'll say heartbreaking, but then the beautiful thing about the story is that it doesn't just end there. I like how you were able to maintain your track, maintain where you were going, continue to pursue your goals, your visions, your desires for your life. That did not deter you. Your experience did not sort of put your life on hold or make you make the wrong decision. Another thing that really inspired me is just your sheer determination to keep fighting, keep pushing, and to achieve the things that you want for yourself in life. But the big question, and which you also you've mentioned that you'd like to highlight now, is how did you get back on track? How did you do it? There's so many people out there. They've made mistakes, done all manner of things, and sometimes it's just hard to find your way back. But you found your way back. So how did you do it?
Thank you so much for having me again. Last week was a blast. So I'm excited about this. I think it's important whenever you tell a story, or whenever you showcase your story. Sometimes you don't tell it, but you might post a picture on Instagram, but it's really important when you tell people how. I find it frustrating when, for example, someone is trying to lose weight and they show you the before and after picture, but you never see the how, and someone who's struggling to lose weight, you're like, how, like how long? You have all questions, and I don't think people take enough time to address the how. And so in telling my story from, being in the wrong relationship to being abused to then having a kid, and then suddenly, I have people now who think, oh my God, wow, Temidaya, she's, she's this. How do you do that? And I'm like, yeah, the how is really important.
Yeah.
The first thing I did was that I never saw myself as a victim. Because I said it briefly the last time, the moment you think of yourself as a victim, it has so many connotations. When you think of the word victim, somebody's down, you think, if you're Nigerian, you might say, yeah, you have things that you just think of that are quite negative. But I think that's definitely the first thing I did, which was, I am not a victim. This thing is not me. As much as it is, you might have a name for it. For example, a rape victim. I am not a rape victim. I don't classify myself as that. My name is Temidaya. Something happened to me, and this is where I am now. So I think that's really important because, words are important. The words you speak over yourself, the words you allow others to speak over you. They always say things like, never be known by what you went through or your circumstance. Yes, that thing has shaped you. It doesn't define you. And I was very clear that this thing didn't define me. And I think part of that was, I think I'd gone to church on watch night service. So if you remember, I find out I'm pregnant around December watch night service, So you typically would go to church, and I didn't want to go. At that point, only like 3 or 4 people knew. But is this the case? I might as well go. And I went, and I remember someone coming up to me and saying, backslider, what are you doing back in church? Wow. Now, this person didn't actually know. So you see how the enemy is. This person didn't know. But just something in me was like, hold on a minute. Church is for sick people. It says it very clearly. So if all the places in the world that I may not be allowed to be in, church has to be the one place I'm allowed. And therefore, I just wasn't having it. I think that was the boldness of Christ. I just was not having it in the fact that I'm not allowed to church. So just because something has happened to you, just because you went through something, doesn't mean that suddenly you're not allowed to have this. You can't do that. You can't be that. I had people telling me.
How do you respond to that person? Because this is something that happens all the time with other people. Like you're trying to move on. You're trying to go past whatever it is. And there's also something where you mentioned that you never see yourself as a victim. That's so beautiful, because for me, I don't even like to call, I feel like someone is a victim when the action is going on. Beyond that, the person is a survivor, because the person survived that. So so the person is no longer, it's like someone was raped 10 years ago. The person is no longer a victim, because at that point the person is not being raped. But the thing is, how does one then respond? I mean, what was the position of your heart? What gave you that sort of, I know you said God, but how does someone push past the people that want to keep you a victim when you are a survivor?
So you have to get rid of certain people. That is a given. You have to, it was me and God, and certain people I had to just wipe off. And some of those people were friends.
Wow.
Some of those people were people who I thought we were like this, and we're not. But the issue is, you don't have time to deal with you have bigger fish to fry. You have bigger things to do. And so I always say something that if it doesn't matter in 5 years, then I'm not going to spend 5 minutes thinking about it.
Wow.
It doesn't matter. Do you understand? And so, so many things that people would say, I always tell my daughter, sticks and stones will break your bones, but words will never hurt you, And so don't get me wrong. Like I said, my pillow and my crying time, absolutely. Go home. I would cry my eyes out.
Yeah.
But you have to be prepared that you will not break me, whoever the you is. And remember I said last week that no one has the power to break you. Nobody. Even physical breaking of death or whatever, that is all in God's hands, nobody else. And I just refused it. So if it meant that I had to take you off my friendship list, so be it. If that meant I had to seclude myself for time, I secluded myself for a long time. Until I was ready to be able to have an answer. Because sometimes you're not confident enough to have a response. Or you don't even know what response to say, or you're just taken aback by what they said, that they just catch you, and you don't know what to say. Fine, just leave it there. There will be a time that you will be able to respond, and then you can respond. And sometimes by the time you do want to respond, it doesn't matter anymore. This person that says this, I still know this person now. I don't even think about it. As far as I'm concerned, I'm so grateful. Look at my life. I'm so blessed. My pastor always says something. People will look at you and say, it is so obviously God. And I pray that is my testimony, that people will say it has to be. What else could it be? So definitely, going back to point one, don't see yourself as a victim. It happened to you. Dust your shoulders off, and be prepared for that. You're only a victim for as long as you stay on the floor. You're only in pain for as long as you stay on the floor. So you're riding a horse and you fall down. Okay, the quickest way to recovery is having to get up. You might have to bandage yourself. Now, that doesn't mean there's no cuts on you. That doesn't mean there's no bruises, but you have to bandage yourself and get back up. And I kind of thought to myself, I'm either going to stay down and I'm going to be down for a long time, or I'm going to get up. And the worst thing that will happen is I'll try and get up and I'll fall back down. And so the first thing I did was around provision, because I have a kid. And I don't want to be someone who's begging on the street. So the first thing I want to do is provision. And I've got so many testimonies I can say. The house I was staying in at the time, I looked in the, like the newspapers or online, whatever, for this house. And I was in Nigeria at the time. So this is March 2011. So I got pregnant November to October 2011. This is March. I'd gone to Nigeria for my mum's 50th.
So were you still pregnant? You're still pregnant at this time, right?
No, this is March, before I'm pregnant. This is
before you're pregnant. Okay.
Like 6 months before I'm pregnant.
Okay.
This house. But I wasn't there to sign the document. So I had to get my friend to pretend to be me.
Okay.
Documents. So when she was signing, she called me, she said, oh, unfortunately, they didn't have a 1-bedroom, which is what I'd deposited for. She said they only had a 2-bedroom. was like, what do I need a 2-bedroom for? It's just me.
Mm.
But the price was almost similar. I just thought, okay, fine. And for me, that was God just, I guess, for knowing a lot of things.
Yeah.
And so when my daughter arrives, she has her room. I have my room, and we stayed there until she was 5. So
Wow.
it was our flat. So it was really nice. And so the second thing is provision. Know the situation you're in, and know what needs to be done. So that means I'm not interested in what people have to say. Of course, people are talking. We know how church people can be. We know how. I don't like to say Black African, but the culture in which we grew up in, we know it can be very toxic, and so that's going to happen. You cannot change that. So there's no point worrying about it. There's no point saying I reject it. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
But that is not my concern right now. My concern is, how do I ensure that this gift that God has now given me, I'm able to provide for it. So it's almost like the parable of the talents. And for those who might be Christian, you might know the parable of the talent. God gave people gifts. He gave them money, and God was asking them to multiply it. So if God had given me this gift, how do I bring out the best of this child? I made sure that my job was secure. I put everything into my job to make sure that it was secure. I worked hard. People left at 5. I clearly had to leave at 5 to get my daughter. But as soon as I get back home, I'm getting on the laptop to make sure that I didn't want to ever be in a position where they say, I'm so sorry, we have to let you go.
But how were you able to cope with your child and working in the evening? So would she just go straight to bed, or?
So she was a good sleeper.
Okay.
Go to sleep at 7, and she woke up.
That's always a blessing. And she wake up at 7.
That was 12 hours. She didn't do, of course, the early months. So obviously, when I'm breastfeeding, 3 months. But from about 7 months, she was sleeping 7 to 7.
Wow.
I researched, and guys, you have to research so much. I researched how to do sleep training. I was not going to be one of those parents that, because I'm by myself, I don't have time. Please go to bed. So I did sleep training, and they said you have to do it for 2 weeks. With the child in there, they cry, but you close the door. You only go back in there if the crying exceeds, I think it was 15 minutes. And that was so tough, but I needed to.
That's the worst.
Oh, that just hearing them cry. Oh my! And sometimes the cry was so high pitched. I'm like, maybe she's falling out of the cot. Maybe something's happened to her. And the first time was hard, but by this 8th day, 9th day, it's getting a lot easier. I think that really helped. But I wouldn't have known that if I didn't research. So you must research these things, and so I did that. So by the time I was, by this time I'm maternity leave. I went back to work at 10 months. So by this time, sleep training. We did the whole sending her to nursery. Finances was crazy. I had money because imagine I have a salary that comes in, and prior to having a child, that salary is mine. By the time I pay off my rent and a few expenses, I can just, like I had no savings. I wasn't planning for this. I was early in my career, as you know, so I was 25, 26. So it's not like I'd been working for 10 years and I managed to stash some cash. I don't have any savings. And now I'm taking a huge chunk and I'm putting in nursery fees. And I think her nursery fees at the time were about £1,000. So
wow.
if I'm getting
was that for a month or?
That's a month.
Okay.
That's a month. Now, thankfully, to the UK system, I'm a single parent, and so there are things that you are entitled to. This is not a time to be being proud and saying, I don't.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then God teaches us God teaches us lessons. I wouldn't say I was very proud, but I wasn't humble at all. I felt that my hands did the work, so this was all me. I would tell people, you have no reason to be lazy. A homeless person, you should be able to get a job. Forgetting that life happens to people. So that was one of my biggest lessons. That was hard. I don't have a quick answer for that. The money that came in went straight back out. In fact, I found myself in debt a number of times. And one time I'd called this debt helpline. So the guy was going through all my expenses, and he said, "Oh wow, you're spending more than you have. And there was nothing he could do for me, and all I could do was just pray. And you only pray, that's when maybe someone says, oh, hey, I just felt to bless you with £100. I'm like, oh my God, thank you, Jesus. In fact, I regularly say one thing that I remember opening my fridge one day. I think she was about 18 months. I'd open my fridge, and the only thing in my fridge was milk and onion. It was one onion in the fridge and milk. And I just looked. I cried a little bit. I just sat there. She had her milk at the time, and she just sat there. And I think about a few days later, someone had blessed me with £362.
Wow.
So
You know, this is the scary thing about being a single mom. Like, not even just because it could happen to anybody, even within a couple situation. Like, literally, we're living each day by grace because you don't know, like, see coronavirus, see what's just happened. Lots of people's situations have changed drastically in a way that December to even January 2020, they didn't expect that they would be in that situation. So, yeah, so it's so nice to hear a story of you coming out of on the other side of that journey. But what was the role of her father? Was he willing to come back? He was willing to support.
he kind of had a mentality that if I didn't allow him and I to be together, for us to have a relationship, then he didn't see how he could have a relationship with her.
Oh, I see.
And then a few times he would say, and he also didn't like the fact that, as he put it, the power was with me, because she lived with me, and I had to dictate what time he could come and pick her up. Whereas he just wanted to turn up. And because I was trying to put one distance between us and get my mind right, it was very much just pick her up at the door. No, you can't come in. And he found that really difficult. And that wasn't something that he was interested in. He wanted to come, chill on the sofa. As far as he was concerned, I was the mother of his child, and therefore I should be at his beck and call. And he just couldn't imagine. In fact, I remember him one telling me something that you're going to need me. Don't worry, you'll need me one day. Of course, that type of thing fires up in me. And I'm like, no.
Makes you more determined.
My prayers intensified, my work intensified. In 2014, I passed my master's.
Wow.
So I didn't have time for mediocrity. I didn't have time for, so and so is going out here. I don't have time. I don't have time. I had a job to do, which was to, one, ensure provision for my kid and make sure that we're not in a place of lack in whatever few years down the line. So he wasn't supporting us financially. I think he gave me £50 on her first birthday, if I remember rightly. He wasn't working at the time or in and out of jobs, so I wasn't expecting anything from him. And I think for women, that's where certainly a lot of the stories I come across is women who are single parents and they kind of want the man to be able to provide. And absolutely, that's what should happen. But if it's not happening, I'm not going to beg for it. And I'm not begging, not because I'm too proud to beg. No, that's not the case. But I can't tell you what you are supposed to do. I'm not the one who's going to tell you what you need to do. 1, 2. It was causing that whole providing causes too much confusion between, are we together? Are we not together? Or what's happening now? Or come round. Then people, and I couldn't even entertain that anymore. And so for me, it was easier just to not pick up my phone. And then sometimes I'd feel bad, like, okay, actually he's the father of this child. Maybe I should be a bit more compassionate, as it were. But every time I gave him a rope, he would just completely take the mick, So, okay, you need to be here at 2, and she'd be banging on daddy, and he doesn't show up. After a while, I was like, I can't do this. I can't be emotionally there for me, do that for her. And I just, So after a while, it wasn't going to work. In fact, she was going to his house for childcare. So when it got really bad and I couldn't afford full-time nursery, I think I worked from home on a Friday, and I'd send her to his house She was probably like 13 months, 14 months or something like that. But again, I could get there and he's not there.
Oh, so what would you do with work on a day like that?
Again, I guess grace and just favor. They know that I'm not a lazy person. So if I don't have childcare, I don't have childcare. Can I work from home, please? Or he'd drop her back and her bags wouldn't be complete. There'd still be things in her. And when you're trying to take steps forward and you feel someone is bringing you 100 steps back, you just have to have a boldness and weigh up the odds. Like, is this really what you want to be engaging in? It shouldn't have to be this difficult, especially when said person is supposed to, love you, or said person is supposed to be trying. And I just thought, what, it's not worth my time, my energy. I was really worried about the fact that she wouldn't have a father figure. All the statistics about girls that don't have, broken home. And again, you have to be careful what you let into your ears. And she had more father figures in her life than most girls do. I had a lot of guy friends at the time, and she had 2 godfathers. She had like 5 grandpas, so and they met, if not every week, to play that role in her life. And again, I was praying, that anything that happened now would not have consequences in the future for her life, So there are certain things you're just not going to entertain, and you have to be very, very hard about that. You can't maybe entertain it. You don't entertain. To entertain means you're not even going to put the TV on. You're not putting it on, but you just have. So in 2014, I passed my master's in April, graduated. In July, I got made redundant from work.
Oh, wow.
I just like, really? By this time, she's 2. Things are moving forward slightly. I got some discount at the nursery because she's now 2, she's potty trained, Things were looking up a little bit. And then I just got made redundant. But, there is a blessing in every single storm. And I was able to find another job. This job was now closer to home. So I was able to drive to work. I didn't have to pay a lot of money to get on the train, So, but you can't spend, you receive bad news. You can't spend, 5 weeks wallowing in self-pity. The first thing I did was start looking for a job immediately. In fact, the moment they gave me the news, I started looking for a job immediately. You don't have time to be a victim and to start feeling sorry for yourself. And so, I did that. I don't know what number I'm on now. The 4th thing, I think, is to find people that can help you, and don't be afraid to ask for help. So I made sure that even though my parents live in London, or I didn't have a lot of family in London, but that I was able to find some people who would help, whether that was babysitting, whether that was whatever it was, just being able to find help for some, for her, whether babysitting for her, or maybe I needed help. Or if someone says, "Oh, what do you need what do you need at home? I'm in Tesco." There's no point saying, "No, I'm fine." If you're not fine, say you're not. Say what you need. This is not the time to be proud. And then I think the final thing I would say, and this, it's going to sound like a broken record. It's going to sound like the cliche thing to say, but I just prayed. I just prayed and I prayed and I prayed. And one thing I did was I started writing letters to myself, or notes, things I wanted to remember. Maybe pieces of encouragement that people told me I would. Maybe it was a text. I would save the text in my notes. Scriptures that came to me, because life is always, there's always going to be a negative card that's going to be played, and you have to be prepared. And so whenever I would feel down, I knew my notes, the notes I was going to get would cheer me up. Self-encouragement is an amazing tool. And I would write, Temina, you're not going to be here in a few years. Just imagine your wedding day. Just imagine the guy that you're going to marry. Just imagine the one who's going to, so I'd just be writing all these things to myself about encouragement. Even when people did negative things. I remember this in church. I'd gone to church and this, I was pregnant at the time. No, I'd given birth. I think I was holding her. And she came up to me, this girl, oh my gosh, really loud. Oh my gosh, when did you have a baby? When did you get married? You didn't even make a wedding. And I just want to crawl into a hole. Oh, when did you get married? Who's this lucky guy? Oh my God, your baby's so cute, blah, 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 blah. Where's your ring? And I was just like, I'm not married. Oh, okay. Oh, I'm so sorry. I was like, why are you sorry? So I made her feel awkward. I wasn't going to feel awkward. I was like, why are you sorry? Oh, she was not laughing. I was like, it's not funny. And I just walked off. In my mind, I'm like, you can't let people win over you, whether she did it on purpose, whether she didn't. I suspect she didn't, but I always say, if you're an adult, you need to learn how to talk. If you don't know how to talk, the same way people say things like, oh, you're married 5 years, you're not pregnant. You had a choice.
Oh, God, that is so insensitive.
Don't get me started on that one. You have a choice as an adult to learn how to speak, to what to say, what not to say. So as far as I'm concerned, she may have not meant it maliciously, but she had an opportunity to be careful with her words. And so I was I'd learned very quickly how to make someone else feel awkward. I wasn't going to feel awkward. And so I remember going home and writing that down, and I just wrote it down. And as I wrote it down, I laughed. I think for me, the beauty of writing is you as you're saying it, you feel that actually it's not that bad.
Yeah.
It's quite funny, and so writing for me was amazing. There were 3 girls, ladies, who really good. I'm still friends with them now, but God just put them there. So when I went to church, as soon as I drove into the car park, they came to meet me at the car park. They would follow me inside. The moment I had labor pains, they were at the hospital. The moment we needed to get maternity clothes, my clothes weren't fitting, they were there. They would not let me be alone for anyone to say anything, and I thank God for those ladies, because they were just there. And that's what happens when you pray, when you soak yourself in prayer, God is able to move. I didn't go and say, hi, 3 ladies, can you be my friends? God orchestrated that. And so soaking yourself up in prayer, even if you're not a Christian, just try it. Just pray, because it's a way for you to pour out your heart to God. The Bible says that he is the father to the fatherless. He's the healer of the brokenhearted. He really is those things once you... And some people say, oh, why do I need to tell him how I'm feeling? He already knows. But he wants you to say it, because that shows your dependency on him. And so I would tell him everything, I would, just like we're sitting down talking now, I would talk to him. I don't like this. I don't know why you would make me this single mother if you don't have a plan. You said you had a plan. I'm waiting for the plan. I had such a real relationship with him, because I wasn't going to be forced into this either mediocre Christian life. Otherwise, there was no point in serving God then. I might not been, or this Christian, I would say, life that I think my parents' generation had, where God was so holy that I couldn't even talk to him. But I learned to know him as the Father, not just God, the Holy One of Israel. I learned to know him as the Father. And if he's my Father, then surely he can talk to me. I can talk to him. I can tell him what's upsetting me. In a big part of this was whether I should marry this guy, the father of my child. And for me, I just wanted to do the right thing. And even though it didn't make sense for me to marry him, I was so bent on making sure I'd sought God as to whether I should do this or not. And I did everything. Oh my gosh, God, give me a sign. God help me. I would say stuff like, oh, if you want me to marry him, make sure he's nice to us for this week. And then he would send me a nice text. Oh my gosh, tricks of the enemy. God, don't let me get there. But I think for anyone watching this, where don't ever think you have to fall. Don't think you have to ever be in a position you don't want to be, that you never intended to be, just because of the cards that life has dealt you.
Yeah.
And so, for anyone thinking that, I hate the thought of anyone thinking, oh, because I got pregnant and I'm having his child, I have to marry him. That is absolutely a ridiculous statement. If that's the case, then I would go as far as saying that then God is not God. And when he says he would make all things work together for your good, that means he doesn't have a plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, which all is plan A anyway. So if you don't take matters into your hands, trust God to do what he said he would do. If that requires you to wait, then it requires you to wait.
Okay. So you say you were a leader in church when all of this happened. So how did you interact with the people that were, should I say your flock, you were the shepherd? How did that relationship come about? Did you have to give them a speech, or what exactly happened there?
Yeah, so that was interesting. The leaders, so we were all we had various roles. And after I told my mentor and my pastor, the head of this, the head of kind of the youth group, I spoke to him and I said, if people are starting to ask where I am, we should have a chat. So we went into one of the rooms at church and we all sat in a circle. And I told them, and they were just so amazing. They just all rallied around me. And I couldn't, so I used to teach, like Sunday school. I couldn't teach Sunday school anymore. But they never made me feel like I wasn't part of the team anymore, So, so that was, I think that was the easiest part. The hardest part for me was, I don't think this had happened in my church before.
Okay.
I think that, certainly not to my knowledge anyway. I think that if it had happened, the girls who had got pregnant had never come back to church. And so it was never dealt with, it was never spoken about. Here is Temidayo still coming back to church. They almost didn't know what to do with me. What do we do now? Is she allowed to do this? Is she not allowed to do that? I don't know. My churches, especially at the time, I guess, was a kind of I wouldn't say your standard, but it was a Black church, and with originated from Nigeria. So I think that culture played a big part in that. Like I said, some people were telling my pastors that she should dissociate herself from me, things that just were kind of crazy. Whereas when I look at, 10 years ago now, my church now, I think they'd act very differently to it. In fact, I remember my pastor calling me about maybe 2 years ago, and another young girl had found herself pregnant, and he was like, oh, this is Temidayo. She's married now. She's going to, So I think that a lot of people just didn't know what to do with it or how to handle it because I came back to church. Whereas most people,
they changed churches,
and that was it. But I came back, and I guess there was some sort of audacity with me as to, so they just didn't know what to do. But I didn't teach, and I was happy not teaching because I wasn't in the right frame of mind at the time. So I was happy not doing that. I think a lot of my peers had a problem with it.
Okay.
When it's almost like how we were taught to be Christian is we were taught you had to be perfect. We were taught that our pastors and anybody in a sense who had a sense of leadership had to be perfect. Oh my gosh, the sun. And so we weren't taught that it's okay if you fall down. It's okay if you fall short of grace. And so I think some people had problem with, no one told me to my face, but I could sense that a lot of people had a problem with it. So, but no one was told the it's not like I had to get on stage and tell church what happened.
Mm.
Do that, thankfully. That would have been crazy. So yeah.
Yeah, but still, I'm just, this whole thing about once you give your life to Christ, my life never remained the same again. I became righteous and holy. I never fell. I never committed sin and all those things. I feel like we're human beings. Like, and the Bible says, confess your faults one to another. That scripture was actually written to Christians. It wasn't written to unbelievers. Most of the scripture is written to Christians, and it keeps talking about confess your faults. If you don't forgive other people, God will not forgive you. That God will not forgive you is not even talking about for you to be saved, because they're writing to Christians. So this is the thing. I strongly believe that every single person is flawed. And the more we recognize our own imperfections, the more we're able to give grace. Because if you keep yourself on a pedestal, I'd never do that, you'll never be gracious to other people. And that's why sometimes God just allows us to fall so that we can be more gracious.
This is it. And you just, the whole point of Christianity, the whole point that Jesus came was to do relationship, was to reconcile, was to pick people up when they fall. So I find it strange whenever we're told, as a Christian, you must be a robot, you must do this, you must do that. And I think that's why, in recent times, we're finding a lot of different expressions with Christianity. You see someone and they don't look like a Christian. I remember seeing a pastor. He had tattoos all over his arms. And I was like, I didn't say anything, but I was like, this guy that started speaking in this, and I was like, what? And it's just, I think we definitely have to see how Jesus sees.
We definitely have to look at ourselves with the eye of grace and look at others with the eyes of grace as well. It does not to excuse our sin, but it humbles us. Just make sure that we're not tolerating sin. We're recognizing our imperfections. We're coming to God, who is the perfect one, to make us perfect continually. And of course, we're growing past different imperfections and getting to higher levels of, I won't call it higher levels of, I don't know if I'll say righteousness, But at the end of the day, there's always something in us that could be better. So thanks a lot, Tim Dyer, for sharing your story. Just before you go, I'd like you to talk to us about parenting. Now let's flip the coin to, now that you're a parent of you have a daughter yourself. And of course, she's going to become a teenager. She's going to grow. She's going to mature. She's going to become a youth. It's so scary because it's like, oh my goodness, I need to make sure this child lives right. Parenting is so scary because you're literally responsible for another human being. And you look, for me as a mom, I look at myself, I'm like, oh my Lord Jesus, there's so much that needs to be done in my life. And I have to be responsible for another person, So what would you say, like, what sort of advice would you give for someone who is raising boys or girls? Like, it's not just about a girl getting pregnant, it's also about a boy impregnating or forcing himself or whatever, or disrespecting other women. I'm saying this forcefully because I'm so passionate about this. Or disrespecting other girls. So what sort of advice do you have for moms and dads?
For a lot of parents, we're not really interested in our children. And I know that sounds harsh, but we're not. We're interested in ourselves. We're interested in what they look like. Have you combed your hair? Because them having messy hair reflects on us.
Yeah.
We're interested in what school they went to, again, because the school reflects on us. We're interested in what grades they got and what they become in life, because all of that reflects on us. But how many of us can say we're interested in them? And so for my mom, as much as, oh my God, my mom went to the ends of the earth for me. And although she was married, she might as well have been a single parent, but that's a story for another day. But she put all her effort. She did how she knew best. But I wasn't able to talk to her. And if you're not able to talk to your mom as a girl, it's pretty much done, in my opinion. And so something I do now all the time is I ask my daughter 2 questions. Is there anything you'd like to talk to me about? And especially when I'm doing her hair, because I know that's going to be 2 hours of us just there sorting out that. And second, is there anything that mummy is doing that you don't like? Those are 2 questions I could never dare ask my mom. But again, we grew up in a certain age, a certain that's different. And I remember being 25, and when this guy came back into my life, or just about to be 25, and I told her, "Oh, mom, do you remember so and so? Oh, they called me," and she said, "What do you want to talk? Don't talk to me about him. Something. I don't want to hear his name. Something. Why would you even?" And she shut the door to that conversation. And in shutting the door to that conversation, I wasn't ever able to bring it back up. So the only time I brought it back up was, "Hi, mom, I'm pregnant."
Oh.
And I wish the door had remained open for us to talk, even if she didn't like it. Because when he was starting to be forceful, maybe, only God knows, maybe I would have told her. Yeah. Maybe she would have intensified. My mom was a prayer warrior. But you can't always pray about what you're not aware of. Sometimes, of course, the Holy Spirit can drop something into you and you may be spiritually aware. But if I tell you I have a problem, you can go away and pray about it. If I tell you I have a problem, you can advise me about it. But I'll never forget that day. I was sitting on my bed and I'd already tried to, talking to a Nigerian mom is never easy, but I really mustered the courage to talk to her about this guy I was now considering for the second time. "Oh, how was your day? How's Lagos?" And I was asking all these questions. She's like, fine. How are you? I was like, "Yeah, so do you remember this guy?" I was doing all the... She just shut the conversation down. Everything she was saying was true, but I wasn't in the right frame to hear it. And she took over the conversation. And so when I talk to, it's funny because when I tell my story, I have a lot of parents come to me and say, I remember one woman, she was a pastor of a church and her daughter had got pregnant. And I said, the best thing you can do now, 1, pray. 2, always leave the door open. Tell her she can talk to you so that nothing will be a surprise for you. If she's considering an abortion, don't start shouting down. There's no point, because you're not carrying this child. You can't carry it for her, So the best thing you can do is, and it doesn't mean you're entertaining it. You're doing as a mother, you're leaving the door open. Do we ever go to God in prayer and God says, no, I don't want to hear. Even if we're saying complete rubbish. And so I would always say, keep the door open so that they can be free to tell you what's on their mind. Especially with, I have a great mentor now, and he, the way he talks to his son is it's just incredible. They'll talk about guys, they'll talk about girls, they'll talk about whether he has a girlfriend or not, how is he thinking about approaching the girl. So these are conversations that are so necessary, because, the way we were parented, you must go to school. And then the day you finish uni, where's your husband? How is it,
And they've been telling you all along, stay away from boys. These boys are the enemy. Suddenly, you're meant to have married one of the enemies.
How do you expect me to then, and for a lot of girls who face sexual harassment, a lot of it's because they don't know. Exactly. So my daughter is 8 now. We're already having the conversation. She has to know what no. She has to herself know what no means. She has to be bold enough to know how to say the no.
Yeah.
You have to know what unwanted attention is. Is it okay for someone to touch your leg? No. And this is why not. So I think a lot of us, certainly my parents' age, haven't had the conversations, and you suddenly expect them to know from where. If they're being taught, and they are being taught, they're being taught from the internet and they're being taught from the school. And in 2020, trust me, you don't want your school teaching your kids.
Oh my goodness.
I won't even go into that right now. So yeah, if you think about a lot of issues in life now, they stem from parenting. The parent not being there enough, the parent being there too much, the parent not loving enough, the parent loving too much, everything stems from the parent. We talk about soul ties, but one of the biggest soul ties is the parenting soul tie. We don't talk about that. And it's for a good reason. They came from you, they're part of you, but that means that we have a lot more jobs on our hands. It's not just what school. I don't even worry about her education and her academics. She's going to be great. That one is already given. And I can't write the exam for her, but what I can do is talk to her every day, about well, what do you think about this, about current affairs? What would you do if a boy was coming up to you? She's going to holiday club and every day, the boys did this, the boys did that. And I said, if you don't like it, you walk away and you don't have to explain yourself. Because
definitely.
I could talk forever on parenting.
Yeah, I hear your point. Open communication is so key because for me, I feel like it was kind of similar with me growing up as well. The conversation is don't have sex with a guy, but there's so many in-betweens. Do you understand? Like there's someone having sex, especially except when someone is being raped by a stranger. Before anybody has sex with another person, there's the journey of the relationship, there's the conversations, there's all these things that have happened before they end up in the same space, and then there's room for that. So if you just go straight to no sex before marriage and that's the beginning and the end of that conversation about sexuality, there's so much that's missed out. The child still has so many blanks. If there's no open communication, of course, like having that no sex before marriage is key. But like you said, if that open communication is not there for the child to keep coming back and filling the blanks, or you observing your child's relationships and trying to fill in those blanks, then the child's gonna feel it one way or the other, either friends, TV, or whatever it is they're being taught in school these days, which is really crazy. So this is really important. Lord help us all. For me, honestly, this thing I'm saying about imperfection, I already know that I'm going to be an imperfect parent. I know that my children are going to have some wounds from me because I'm wounded and I'm broken. So I pray for them that God will help them, because no matter what I think, no matter what I do, like I can never be enough. And I think that that's life in general. We can never be enough. We can never be all things. We can never be everything. But perhaps if we acknowledge our imperfections, and like you said, one of your points is ask for help. Help from people and help from God. Then things will be a bit easier. And also pray for God to heal the wounds that they take from me. Let God heal them and help them to be better with their own children, because life is
you already know about those wounds the fact that you already know about those wounds is brilliant, because you start to address that and you know that. I always tell my daughter will say, how did you know that? And I say, I know everything. She says, no, Mom, you don't know everything. God knows everything.
That's good.
So we're not parents. We're not supposed to know it all. To do it all. So.
Yeah. And even sometimes saying sorry brings healing for the child. Like it means because for me, I feel like growing up, I actually thought my mom was perfect. Honestly, like I was in my 20s, close to 30, before I realized actually she's not perfect. She's not perfect. She makes mistakes too. Because I just looked up to her. She was everything. Even till now, like she's still so much to me. But I know that she's imperfect. And so I can give her grace for the wounds that I took from her. I can be gracious and be graceful towards her now. But before, like I always felt like, oh, my mom is so perfect. My mom is all knowing. If 10 people say anything and my mom says something, they're all wrong. My mom is right, So that also, and if you feel like your mom is perfect, I also felt like I had to be perfect, And my mom, later, I think when I became an adult, she got to the point where she started saying if she realized that something went wrong, she'll come and say sorry. But that's not really something I grew up with per se. So it's hard to acknowledge my own imperfections. It was hard to acknowledge my own imperfections and to think that, oh, you're wrong. This thing you did is wrong. So it took a lot of reflecting to get to that point.
Yeah.
You know, but God help us as parents. I feel like I'm drifting off now. Let me not go too far from it.
It's true. It's like I said, all of life's issues stem from that. So even the men that have committed acts, you know, of rape, of sexual you know, there's where did it go wrong? You know, at what point? How did they? You know, that thing is wrong. You know, and so yeah, parenting is very, very important.
Thank you so much, Temidayo, for coming back. Do you have any final words you'd like to leave us with?
So I think I just go back to the beginning where I said you are not a victim. You know, you are not what has happened to you. You're not even what is happening to you now. You know, so like you were saying things about the COVID. COVID is not going to last forever. It doesn't define you. You know, there's that quote about it's just a chapter in your story. You know, and to think about, if you think about our years as chapter, you know, by God's grace, we'll be on earth for 70 years plus. Many of us are just in 20s, in 30s, maybe even our 40s, and there's still 30 years, 30 more chapters to go. So just hold on. If you are a single mother, you are doing absolutely great. You are an amazing single mother. You can't be perfect. There are people that have are in a 2-parent household that are still not getting married. So it doesn't make you any less of a parent because you are only and if you desire to get married, we'll pursue the desire. It's very simple.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I made some notes while you were talking. The first one is don't be a victim. Fix your finances. You're going to need money for yourself and your child. Don't entertain mediocrity. You look for father figures in your space. You could have a mentor, men that you trust, that you look up to be father figures for your children. Get the help you need. Don't be ashamed of asking for help. Pray, encourage yourself, and journaling was one of the things you said that also helped. Thank you, Temidayo. This has been very inspiring. It's been an inspiring conversation. I know that lots of people are going to find healing and help just listening to your story. So I really appreciate your coming back to tell us how you actually got back on your feet, not just the beginning, not just the brokenness and the joy, but also the journey you went through. It's really, really encouraging. Thank you so much for coming on. Guys, thank you all for watching. Please subscribe to Wise Attraction YouTube chat show. See you next week, Thursday. Bye.